Hi and welcome to this eSaleshub video on inbound sales call tracking, 7 key metrics for success. Now, if you've watched a number of our eSaleshub videos before, you'll notice that tracking sales calls and tracking inbound calls from Google is absolutely critical to your local search campaign. Google's data tells us that 71% of people call as part of the transaction from a local search. In fact, I think as many as you know, we at eSaleshub believe this to be higher, more like 80%, which is why tracking your calls effectively from local search is the difference between you being able to calculate an ROI and not. It is that critical. So we've come up with the 7 key metrics because I was interested to see that Wordstream, great solution by the way, really good if you're looking to improve the performance of your AdWords campaign. They came with a blog and they gave the top 5 metrics for inbound calls. Now, I must admit when I read it, I thought there was a couple of metrics that were missing, probably because the eSaleshub analytics tool that we've developed takes call tracking to a completely different level compared to what is out there on the market. You might have heard of CallRail or Response Tap, which are great solutions for tracking calls. But actually, at eSaleshub, what we're interested in doing is actually tracking the return on investment and the sales performance of the leads that we drive from telephone calls. So we think there's about 7 key metrics that most clients should take particular interest in. So I'm going to drive straight into them now. So metric number 1 is deciding whether you're going to track calls or leads. Now, you're probably going to argue, well, hang on a second, isn't that a question? Well, no, it's your number 1 metric because for me, it's all about tracking leads, not just calls, because the issue with calls is not every single call is going to be a lead. So you could be kidding yourself that actually your campaign is performing better from a lead point of view, but worse from a sales point of view because you're counting all calls as if they were sales leads. Now, in our experience, we tend to find that 85% of calls are indeed sales leads. You know, it's a unique call, it's over a certain amount of time, and it's from a customer inquiring about your product or service. We do find that about 10% of calls are duplicates, so you need to lop those off, and about 5% of calls are out of scope. People phoning up either for a job or they're trying to sell you something, but they're clearly not a lead. Now, if you're not careful and you choose your number 1 metric is tracking calls, you could actually be overinflating your numbers by, I would say, minimum 10-15%, maximum maybe 30-40%. Now, if you've got a 30-40% variance in your data, that is going to have a major effect on your sales conversion. You could actually be doing a far better job for sales conversion if you're just tracking leads rather than all calls. So it really is a decision that you need to make up front is what are you actually going to measure, calls or leads. The second metric, and I think it's quite a good metric to understand the performance of your inbound sales team, is missed calls. It sounds pretty simple, but unless you have the right resource in place and the right team in place, you could actually be missing lots and lots of sales opportunities. You know, if you're running an inbound call campaign, but your team is outbounding, they're not going to be available to take an inbound call, so you're going to miss a lot of calls. Likewise, if you don't have enough resource on at various different times, which is why it's always good to look at patterns for missed sales opportunities and missed calls, it might be that you need to start your team a little bit earlier, or you might have more inquiries on a Monday, Tuesday than you do on a Wednesday, Thursday, and therefore you need to change the rota pattern. But for me, missed calls are a missed opportunity for you to sell your product or service, and it really does give you some really good insight into the performance of your team. The third metric is call duration. Now, in a way, it's similar to a missed call, but call duration, the longer the call, for me, the higher the quality conversation, therefore the more likelihood that you're going to actually convert that person. But there's definitely 2 differences. If it's an emergency call, it's an emergency electrician, emergency plumber, I wouldn't expect that call to last much longer than 2 minutes, and you should be able to convert a client within 2 minutes. If it's non-emergency, if it's someone who's looking to buy a car, or if it's somebody that's looking for a mortgage, I would expect that conversation to be a lot longer, 3 to 5 minutes. So if you're in financial services and your calls are lasting less than 2 minutes and your conversion's low, well, to me straight away, are you asking the right questions? Does your team need a bit of sales training? Is there an opportunity for you to have a better conversation with that person? So it's a really good metric. Metric number 4 is agent performance scoring. Now, what we do at eSaleshub is, because we use artificial intelligence to mine the calls for data, what we're able to do is score each call that we generate to determine the performance on that call. Now, it's a really, really good tool because, again, the difference with driving inbound calls is unlike e-commerce, where you're worried about the shopping journey and the different stages of the shopping cart. With inbound calls, you're very, very dependent on the person on the end of the phone in your team, their ability to close a call. So therefore, if they're being scored, and you can very quickly understand what your score is out of 10 for different members of your team, you can then tailor the training that you deliver to your different team members to build upon their skill set. So we mark any call out of 10. Generally what we're looking for is an introduction. We're then looking for fact finding and obviously a close. And if you don't close them there and then, actually, one, asking for the sale as part of the close, but two, if you don't close them, to actually book a callback, because we find that booking callbacks will increase your conversion by about 50%. You'll get about half the people that you call will actually take you up on your offer, because it gives you a chance to reposition your product once they've had a look around the marketplace. So again, I find that actually scoring the performance of agents that are answering your calls gives you a really good insight into what's actually going on. Metric 5 is lead to sale conversion. Now, I have to tell you how you can track calls without measuring your lead to sale conversion and understand how well your campaign is doing. I just don't know how it can be done, if I'm totally honest with you. I've got here a screenshot of one of our clients, their lead to sale report for the last few days. And you can see here they've had 15 leads. They've done 9 quotes. They've converted 9 of those quotes into 9 sales. They've got a lead to quote of 60%. They've driven £1,300. They've got an average invoice value of 145, and they've got a lead to sale conversion of 60%. Now, without you being able to track your lead to sale, which is why I think it's one of the most important metrics, you just don't know how well your campaign's doing. And if you can get this type of data in real time, which is what we provide our clients, then you can get a real understanding of your performance of your campaign. And if you're uploading that data to Google like we do, you can actually implement real-time bidding and dramatically improve the performance of your AdWords campaign. The 6th metric is identifying location hotspots. Now, as you'll see here, I've got an example of a couple of different locations in Scotland. You can see here that Edinburgh, we've driven 6 leads, 4 quotes, 4 sales. They're getting average sale conversion of 67%, lead to sale conversion of 67%. Great. But their average invoice value is only 110. Whereas if you look at Glasgow, which you might argue, well, Edinburgh is a little bit more upmarket, isn't it? But Glasgow, they're getting a much lower conversion, almost half of what they're getting in Edinburgh, but their average invoice value is £145. So straight away, what you can see is you can see differences in the way different locations behave for your brand or product. So it might be that in Edinburgh, actually, is there an opportunity to put the price up because you're getting a very, very high conversion rate. Whereas in Glasgow, actually, are you charging too much, and therefore do you lower your price ever slightly to drive that conversion up? Again, if you're not identifying these location hotspots from your local search, you're never going to see this granular level of data, and therefore you're not going to be able to optimize your campaign to the true depths that a company like eSaleshub can, because you've got to have this data in the first place to enable you to make those decisions and affect the bidding for your Google Ads campaign. And the final metric for us is calculating your return on investment. Once you've got all of these different levels of data, you've got your cost per lead, your average invoice value, your lead to sale conversion, your cost per sale, you can then work out what your return on investment is. And we find this to be super critical, because driving leads from Google, most people can do it. There is technology and there's a lot of agents out there that can do a brilliant job doing that. The key to is to actually deliver a strong return on investment. And we know ourselves, if we get a 5-to-1 return on investment for a client, it's okay, it'll wash its face. If we get a 10-to-1 return on investment, we know that the client will be making money. If we get a 20-to-1 return on investment, so that's for every pound they spend, they get 20 back, we know that we're doing a great job and that client will want more and more leads, and they've got the capacity to take that because they're making a lot of money out of the lead generation that we do. And for me, it's a really important metric because it defines your success at the end of the day, which is why some people don't like calculating ROI because they're worried about the actual return on investment being below 5. We're eSaleshub, we're always interested in the return on investment. That's why we calculate it on an ongoing basis for our clients so they can clearly see, what is it we need to do? Is it that we need to increase the average invoice value? Do we need to look at some different keywords, some higher quality keywords? Is it something that they can affect their side with a bit of sales training, increasing their prices or lowering their prices to affect the return on investment that they're getting? So that's our eSaleshub 7 key metrics for call tracking. For me, the key takeaways are, tracking calls can be ineffective. It's all about tracking sales leads, in my opinion. Your metrics should always include sales data. There is no point in tracking calls unless you can actually attribute sales data to it. Otherwise, it's great that you're generating calls from your ads, but actually what's the value that it's providing? Your analytics should include location trends wherever possible because you can then start building demographic profiles off the back of it and really understanding types of customers that you're generating. And obviously, the key to it all is return on investment. Without getting your sales metrics, without understanding your analytics to a greater detail, you won't be able to work out what your return on investment is and therefore show value for the campaign that you're doing. So for me, return on investment is absolutely critical to any metric set that you produce. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's video from eSaleshub. Thanks very much for watching. As ever, please do leave us any comments. Thanks very much.